Well, welcome to Water Hub and Community Water Center's digital organizing workshop. So just going to take a minute to introduce myself and the Water Hub. So the Water Hub is a project of Climate Nexus, and what we do is we serve the water justice movement in the West with trainings like these. And my name is Mina Hussein. I use she, her pronouns. I'm the digital manager for the Water Hub, and I have 10 years experience in digital marketing for nonprofits. So yeah, and then over to Jerry.
Hi, everybody. Thank you for joining. I'm Jerry Jimenez. I'm the communications manager for the Community Water Center, and we work to ensure that all Californians have access to safe, clean, and affordable drinking water. I have 14 years of experience with communications for nonprofits, but only one day of experience surfing. So that's why there's a picture of me catching only a 1 foot wave.
Thanks, Jerry. And I just want to take a minute for the Water Hub team who is providing support today to quickly just introduce themselves and how they'll be supporting us during this training today. Why don't we start with Sarah?
Hey everyone, my name's Sarah Bucci. I use she, her pronouns, and I hold down the fort in Colorado for the Water Hub. And today I'm going to be checking in on the chat and making sure that if folks have questions that come up, we answer them through the program.
And I'm Nicole Lampe. I am in Portland, Oregon, and I am the managing director of the Water Hub, she, her pronouns, and I will be moderating the Q&A later on.
And I'm Kimiko Martinez, she, her pronouns. I am currently on Serrano lands down in the San Bernardino Mountains in California. And I'm on tech, so if you're having tech issues, you can email me, chat me, whatever, and I will do what I can to help you out.
Wonderful. Thank you all so much. So just going to quickly walk us through our agenda for today, what we're going to cover. So for the first chunk of time, you're going to hear from me. We're going to talk about digital organizing. And then Jerry is going to drop us into the real world application of these concepts and principles, right? What is it like in the real world when you're doing this work every day? And then we'll have 30 minutes for Q&A. And I also just want to share that this presentation recording will be shared with you all, and it'll be up on our blog and public as well. So you have access to all of these materials. You can share it with your colleagues, with your friends. So feel free to not furiously take notes today, right? You're going to have access to this. And I'm also going to send a follow-up email to you all with some resources and links as well. So yeah, and that'll go out next week. So you'll have all of this. Yeah, and then I also ask that, feel free to drop your questions in the chat as they come up. We'll have a few pauses in the material as we go through, and Sarah and Nicole will kind of lift up the quickly answered questions that we can answer during a pause, and we'll save the longer questions for the end as well. So if you have like a big question you want to ask that you really want to dive into, we do have a 30-minute chunk of time. So I'm hoping we can cover and have a great discussion today as well. So yeah, just jumping in. So digital organizing. One thing I want to talk about is, how online and offline organizing, they work in tandem, right? That's why we have this cute little family on a tandem bike. I think at our organizations, oftentimes these roles can be very siloed, right? You can have a separate grassroots department, for example, and then you might have a separate digital team, right? And they might not ever talk to each other or just be representationally separate. But really, digital organizing or online organizing, that they're the same thing, whatever you want to call them, they always work under the same principles for offline organizing, right? Which is meet people where they are. So they work in the same way, and your audiences are in the same place, right? You might, someone you might meet at a community meeting is going to be in the online space as well, in the digital space as well. So just keep that in mind, that they all feed into each other, and all those touches all come down to, one key audience. So in COVID, this is just even more blended and affirmed, right? We're in Zoom life. Here we are right now in Zoom life. And this is a long-term situation, right? We have to kind of grapple with that with our organizations and really think about what that means for us, right? And so, one of the things that I like to think about when we're moving from the offline world into the digital realm is that retention of person-to-person connectivity, right? That's what's so valuable about offline organizing. You go to a meeting, you end up having a side conversation, you have a really great one-to-one connect with the organizer, and you're kind of left feeling inspired, and you're left feeling like, yes, I want to participate. I want to make those calls. I want to go canvas. And so, I think one of our biggest challenges is thinking about how to retain that person-to-person kind of contact, that deeper intimacy that we form, right? And just reiterating again, meet people where they're at, right? I think one thing I'm really going to emphasize during this whole training is that, having a digital program that is on every single social media platform is not the milestone of a good digital program, right? It's not the key. If you have an audience, for example, that really isn't connected to the internet and doesn't have access to social media in that way, but they maybe they like text a lot, maybe they're on their phone, they have access to cell phones, they are texting a lot. Maybe what you want to do for your digital program is really invest in an SMS service, a peer-to-peer SMS tool, right? Like that's the type of thinking and the innovation we want to be thinking about. We want to be moving from an organizing perspective and the principles of that, of meeting people where they're at. So one of the big differences for digital media versus traditional media is that it's a two-way street, right? When I think about, traditional media, for example, you're putting out a press release, it's really like a one way, one lane kind of a road, right? You have, you're putting out a lot, and you might get a few responses from reporters, that sort of thing, but they're mainly kind of reading and seeing what you're putting out there and then deciding if they want to cover it. With social media, I really like to focus on cultivating community, right? And I just want to acknowledge that at the beginning, this is going to feel like maybe screaming into an empty room, and you're going to feel like maybe you're talking a lot and you're not getting a lot of response from your community. But really, I try to come from a focus of cultivating community, and also the acknowledgement that you get back what you put in, right? And so if you're focused on cultivating community, you're going to build that community is going to grow, and people are going to start responding to you, and you're going to have a lot more of that conversation that you're seeking in the digital world. So now just jumping into what a communication strategy looks like. Just a couple of tips before we dive into, just the strategic principles is, don't get caught up in the doing, right? It's easy for us to get bogged down in those day-to-day output needs, right? You have voices everywhere, virtually coming at you over Slack, over email, asking for a tweet, asking for a Facebook post, asking for a campaign. It's hard for us to find time to really think at the higher level, to think at that 10,000 foot level, to inform our tactics. And so, that is a difficult thing to do. And so, it's easy to get caught up and also to get distracted by shiny new tools or tactics, right? Just because this organization next to you is on TikTok doesn't mean you need to be on TikTok as well. And then, setting yourself up for success, right? That's what I think about when I think about the big picture and that umbrella. And this is the stuff that we're going to be covering right now around communication strategy. So defining your goals, defining your objectives, setting your KPIs, those are key performance indicators. I'll explain what those are in a minute. And then being consistent and defining what success means for you. And I'll talk about that as well. So now diving in. So to think about communication strategy for me and digital strategy, I like to use this mnemonic device. It's called the Game Plan. And this is from a program that happens once a year called Spin Academy. It's now the Reframe Academy. And it's something that Lightbox Collaborative talks about. So I just want to name the lineage here and where this comes from, right? We're not the only ones speaking to this. And the game plan stands for goals, audience, message, and engagement. And this is the order in which I try to think about strategy in order to get down to thinking up informed tactics and having really well-planned campaigns. So starting with goals, right? What are goals, objectives, and KPIs? We throw around these words a lot, right? And you might hear them a lot. So just to define them a little and just to see how I like to order them, goals are your overall purpose, right? And these can come from your overall communication strategy goals. And if you don't have that, that's okay. Look to your program strategy goals, right? All of our work in communications is folded into the campaigns and policy goals and the program work that we're doing at our organization. So you can always look to those documents and you can pull out their big goals and reform them into communications goals for your program as well, right? This really will help connect things for your organization. And then an objective is a statement about the goal, how the goal will be achieved, right? So you want to have about 2 to 3 objectives per goal. You don't want to have any more than that, okay? And then you have a key performance indicator or a KPI. This helps you measure success along the way and check in on your progress. So I like to think about these like milestones, right? To check in on my objectives and my goals to make sure that ultimately I'm chipping away at them. So here's a real world example of, how I would write this, right, in a document. So, a goal for us at WaterHub is to center the leadership of impacted communities through communications, right? And so that's a part of our theory of change. You can find that in our theory of change, right? So I took that from there. Right? That's like a program goal that I've turned into a communications goal. And then a couple objectives under that I wrote are to feature the leadership of BIPOC spokespeople on social media for the year. And then also to raise the profile of local community groups on digital and communications for this year as well, right? And I just set some dates there. And here's an example of a KPI, right? So we took the first objective, feature the leadership of BIPOC spokespeople on social media by December. And a KPI for that that we've created is to create a campaign featuring BIPOC Water Experts Weekly by November 2020. So that's a campaign that Kimiko's working on and gonna roll out later this year. So that's a kind of a way to format this and organize this, and then to be able to iterate where your campaign ideas are coming from, right? And how they fall into the strategy. So a note on this, make sure that these goals are SMART. And SMART means strategic, measurable, attainable, realistic, and timely, right? And that's why I wrote these this way. If you see, going back to this slide, you can see clearly, like, first of all, I always end with a time frame to make sure that timeliness is there, right? And then also, where am I trying to feature the leadership? If you look at this objective on social media, right? Is that attainable, right? And is this objective itself realistic, right? Can we do this in the time frame provided? So this is really to seat ourselves in reality, so that we're not setting goals, objectives, and KPIs that can just not be trackable or measurable or make any sense, really, right? So yeah, it's really important to try to write these in this kind of a smart acronym way, because I think it will help to go back and measure success and then tell the stories to your leaders, to your funders about what you've accomplished and what you've achieved. So the next piece of that plan, now that we've talked about goals, is your audience, right? So audience is so key, right? This really tells us who we're talking to, right? When we understand who we're talking to and the different audiences we're talking to, this allows us to build empathy. And I'm going to kind of walk through some types of questions I like to ask, some profiles I like to do when I'm thinking about an audience for my organization and its work. Because empathy building and being able to kind of put ourselves in the shoes of our audience leads ultimately to better messaging, right? And so just in general, you want to think about the fewer the better for your audiences, right? The fewer audiences you have, the more specific and scoped your messaging will be. So it can really hone in on just converting folks and moving folks to action or moving folks to do what it is you want them to do. So the general public does not exist, right? I just want to, just a note for that, a meme for that. Whenever, if anyone's ever talking to you about the general public, I want to speak to the general public, that's not a real thing. We're all made up of specific demographics and populations. And if you are, if you're going to go too broad, your messaging isn't going to actually hone in on your target audience. So, you know, just never put that down. Just don't. And just this is another way to kind of see ourselves in that if you're feeling like challenged by this, because I know this is something that is still very prevalent in our work day to day. So it can be really hard to kind of conceptualize this. So I understand. So imagine if you were given a $1 million grant, right? $1 million. Would you spend $1 each on 1 million people? Or $10 on 100,000 people, or 100 on 10,000 people? How would you distribute those funds, right? And then this final line kind of says, or do you want to like spend it on $10,000 on 100 people you most wanted to move and influence others to take action, right? So that's just something, right? We all can, I think, tell with this money breakdown, like $1 each on 1 million people, maybe it won't move folks to that action. So, you know, that's what I think about when I think about audience and thinking about how to move people to action. You want to get really specific and focus on the specific group that you know will move and will do the thing and help to meet the goals that you're trying to reach this year or in the next few years. Yeah, and then audience profiles, right? So I mentioned this, and I'm going to show you an example of this right now. And this allows you to, you know, identify opportunities to meet those audiences where they are, right? And to put yourself in their shoes. So the next 2 slides, this is a sample audience profile, right? So what I like to start with is values, right? What does the audience that I'm trying to reach care about, right? And then the problem, what's keeping them from being supportive, right? What is keeping them, hindering them? And then why should your audiences care about your organization, right? This is the solution. Why should they engage with your organization? Why should they support you? And then messengers, right? Whom do they trust? What messenger makes them stop and listen, right? What thought leader makes them stop and listen? And then tactics, right? Where do they get their news or information? So where do I get my news from? Do they listen to a podcast in particular? List those out. So yeah, I'm just going to take a pause. I know that's a lot. Any questions so far? Okay. Anything in the chat, Sarah?
No questions in the chat, but just wanted to plug Marta shared Management Center resource on SMARTY goals that also include equity and inclusiveness, which I really appreciate. So
Wonderful.
thanks.
Thank you, Marta, for sharing that. I have seen that before, and yeah, thank you. I should add that next time to that slide. Thank you very much. Okay, great. Shout out to the Management Center helping us manage. Yeah, okay, so let's move on to messaging. Okay, that's the M in the game plan. So we talked about audience, we talked about messaging. Why is it so important, right? And it's so important because our audiences know when they're receiving the right messaging and when they're receiving the right kind of targeted ad or message, right? In the digital realm, we are getting targeted in advertising constantly and on a constant basis. And so this is a meme from the Dolly Parton Challenge. It happened, I don't know if you all have heard about it. It happened earlier this year, pre-COVID. Everyone started to post these photos of themselves and what they would look like on various social media platforms. And that's because like our audiences know how they should show up on each platform, right? Our audiences are so savvy now. So it's really, audiences are super smart now about marketing and they know about it. So this cute little greyhound, Italian greyhound, this is what they look like on LinkedIn, right? Professional face, got the glasses on, you know, similar to how Jerry looks today, right? Got the glasses on, looking professional. And then here's their Facebook photo, right? Looking really lovely, very personal, right? Personal face-to-face. Then Instagram, we've got the flower crown going on, really artsy fartsy, kind of a more design oriented platform. And then we have Tinder, right? And this little dog is a saucy minx, right? On that dating app. And so, you know, I think this is just a really fun way, but also a really telling way to see that our audiences really know when the right messaging lands with them. And they're just gonna totally throw it aside if it's not landing with them or if it's not the right demographic. They know it now. So yeah, so for messaging, this is the formula that I like to use for developing a message. So now that we've done our audience profiles, now doing this is pretty easy, right? And this is called VPSA. It stands for Volume, Problem, Solution, Action, and it's from the Opportunity Agenda. So you can go check them out online. They have a tool that you can use to build messages. So you want to start with the audience you want to build a message for, right? Because you want to build unique messages for each audience you work with. So name that audience, and then you want to start with values, right? What's the shared value that your organization and your audience share, right? And then name the problem. What's the problem? What's standing in the way? And then what is the solution, right? We often in the nonprofit space, we jump from problem to action. We miss solution completely. We often don't talk about solution. So make sure to name the solution, right? That's so important. And then the action. What do you want them to do? Do you want them to take action on a petition online? Do you want them to make a call? Do you want them to join a Zoom comment period? Whatever it is, right? So that's just a little handy dandy way. And then this little thing is like a little worksheet, right? And you can turn that into like a 2 or 3 sentence message. That can be a caption on a Facebook post. It can be shortened into a tweet. So yeah, you can really work with this formula and develop the content you need to develop from it. Consistency. Just these are a couple like tips and notes that I just want to drop in. consistency is the key, right? Just being as consistent as you can, and just knowing that we know in social media platforms and in the digital space that only a small percentage of our audiences see any one of our posts or our email newsletters at any one time. So don't, I think for us as managers, we're constantly working in this messaging. We're constantly talking about the same thing. And so it might feel repetitive to us. But this is just a note to say it's not. Your audiences are not seeing what you're putting out all the time. So just keep repeating yourself, keep, saying the same thing over and over again, and doing it consistently, so if you're posting to Facebook twice a week, keep on doing it. That's great. So yeah. Now just jumping into the E, right? Engagement of the game plan. So these are the tools in your toolbox, right? These are the tactics. These are the things that your colleagues, your executive director are coming to you for, right? They're asking for that press release. They're asking for a Facebook post, a tweet. They're asking you to post a blog on the website or to create a new page on the website. These are the tools in our toolbox. And so one of the things I like to do to organize all of these tools and tactics is to think about a content strategy, right? And so I'm just going to cover these really quickly and break it down, but this is what I like to think about. So there's social listening, content pillars, and building content partnerships. So, we are going too fast. What is social listening? So social listening can look like any one of these things, right? Hashtag research. This is a way for you to look into the conversations that are already happening about the issue areas that your organization works on, right? So hashtags are where conversations happen, predominantly on Twitter and Instagram, Facebook too, right? And then there's Twitter lists, right? You can create private or public lists where you can track thought leaders in the space and hear what they're talking about, right? And you can just go in and check those every day and see what's going on, right? What's the conversation about? And then you can also follow pages, right? Like on Facebook, for example, you can follow pages of your allied organizations, of your opposition, to really track the messaging that's going out and see what's working, right? And then listening to thought leaders, right? This kind of is similar to Twitter lists. If you're creating one of thought leaders, just hearing how their messaging is changing about a certain issue area. Then we have content pillars, right? So these are the programs and the campaigns that you already work on, right? And I just call them content pillars because it's a way in which you can decide how much you want to talk about a certain issue over a period of time. So for example, I put community water centers content pillars on here. They work on groundwater, drought, and water affordability. So, depending on your tactical points in the campaign or when a piece of legislation is going to drop, you might be talking about one of these content issues more during a certain period of time than the others. So it's really important to just name that, right? Like maybe you're going to talk about drought for the next 3 weeks because of some breaking news. And you're going to post to Facebook about drought maybe 80% of the time. And then the other 20%, you're going to talk about water affordability, for example, right? So it's just naming that breakdown for yourself so that we're not forgetting, we're not losing any pieces of the puzzle there, because we all work and talk about a lot of issues. Then, just want to name using lots of third-party content, right? And so these ratios I put down. So I recommend using an 80 to 20 ratio. That's 80% third-party content and 20% original content, or even 90% third-party content and 10% original content. So you don't need to create a new graphic or a new meme every single time you're posting to social, right? You can retweet, you can repost stuff and mention an allied organization. It's really important and will save you a lot of time, right? And this kind of goes into building content partnerships, right? This is us translating our real world partnerships into the digital world, right? It's the best way to build power quickly, because you're able to attract and convert similar audiences, right? So if you are posting a graphic from an allied organization that you work with in person, and then you're mentioning their page, that's going to drive traffic to their page. And then if they're doing the same for you, it's going to drive traffic back to your page, right? There's going to be a small amount of people that are going to say, oh, let me check out that organization. What are they about? I like this graphic. And then they're going to go, they're going to follow your page. They're going to become a member, right? And so that is something to really think about, and to think about how you're building that power online. And it's really just translating what you're doing offline every day into the digital realm. And then it'll also get you more social reach for that big campaign push, right? So just thinking about when you do invest that time and those resources in building original content for a specific campaign, then you have a network of allied organizations or organizations that you interact and collaborate with in the digital world to also post your content and to mention you and to drive traffic back to your posts and to retweet you and all of that, right? So really helpful. Now, another piece of this might be a term you've heard in the past, is multi-channel marketing, right? And multi-channel marketing is just what we talked about, right? We talked about messaging and putting out, repeating yourself all the time. This is now repeating yourself in different places at the same time, right? That's what multi-channel marketing means. So maybe you put out a post to Facebook about your groundwater campaign, then you also send out an email about it the same day to launch your campaign. I mean, maybe within that week, you're also sending out a mailing in direct mail to that audience with a letter as well, right? So just understanding and acknowledging that our audience live in different places, right? They all have email. They might visit your website. They might be searching various keywords that are around the work you do. They're also on social media. So if you're going out with that similar message on those various platforms, that's how you're going to increase your conversion rate, right? Increase your action rate. Another piece about this is your voice, right? Your voice and your tone. This is really important to think about how you're putting out your message. What is your brand voice? How do you all speak? And there's 4 elements to this that are here in this handy little worksheet: is your character, your tone, your language, and your purpose, right? And these are just some words that you could pull from. So just want to share an example of this. So let's go with the one at the top here. I know there's a lot to read, so just stick with the one at the top. Let's say your character, your persona is casual, playful, and inspiring. So what it would sound like is break out the biscuits and celebrate. The dog day sale is here. What pet products are you stocking up on, right? This is a super like advertising marketing example. But it wouldn't say, don't miss the dog day sale unless, of course, you don't love your dog, right? That's not a casual and playful and inspiring message, right? Doesn't really want to make me go buy dog food, right? It's a little bit guilty, a little bit shamey, right? And I think that's important to think about. Oftentimes in the nonprofit industry, in our messaging, we do lean on a lot of guilt and shame and worry and fear. And so you want to think about, what kind of emotion am I wanting to evoke for my audience, right? What's going to lead them to action, right? And we know from studies that like feeling guilty or feeling that shame or feeling that fear does not lead people to move to action. So yeah, it just kind of goes back to values, emotions we're trying to evoke, that sort of thing. Yeah. Another pause. Any questions that are coming up?
Mina, I don't have a question, but I did want to mention that we have done some water message testing in a couple of polls this year, and I'll drop the links to those in the chats. Our findings confirm what Mina shared, that sort of hopeful, constructively hopeful messages are rated most convincing by voters.
Thank you, Nicole. Super relevant. Great. All right. Well, let's move on to measuring success. You know, I've been doing digital marketing work for a while. There's always questions, right? There's always questions from my superiors, from my colleagues that work with me that are like, hey, is this campaign going to work? We have 100,000 followers on Twitter. Is that a good thing? Or is that not enough, right? These questions kind of come up. They come from everywhere, from funders, from all over, from ourselves, right? Within ourselves, right? You might be waking up in the morning thinking, how's my Twitter today? One thing I want to just mention is, track your progress, right? Your growth is what is going to be proportional to what you do and your campaign size. I encourage you to not compare yourself to others. Don't compare yourself to Coca-Cola, for example. That is a corporation that has like entire teams that just work on social media and that have millions of dollars to invest in advertising. Our audiences are all unique. So our progress on social and on our digital programs is going to be unique as well, right? So I just really want to emphasize that. So a couple ways I'm going to just talk about doing that is how to create simple monthly reports for yourself that don't take a lot of work to produce, and then how to just track your growth monthly. So the main metric I just want y'all to go away with today is engagement rate, okay? The engagement rate, so this is a screenshot from Twitter's analytics backend. It's really simple to connect your Twitter account to the analytics backend. You just have to like click OK on a button and it does it. And then you get to see all this deep dive data. And this is tweet level data. So this is for one tweet that you can see is kind of cut off here. And we get impressions, and impressions are the same as reach, right? On Facebook, if you're in Facebook analytics. So that just means how many people were served your post, right? So in this case, 85 people saw this tweet from WaterHub. Engagements, 2. So engagements are clicks, retweets, replies, follows, and likes. That's literally anything you could do with a tweet, possible, right? On Twitter. And so that's all added up. So in this case, there were 2. And then there's your engagement rate. So that's just your number of engagements divided by the total number of impressions. That gives you a percentage. So in this case, it's 2.4%. So what's great about tracking your engagement rate is that you can start to get an average for yourself, or the average of your top few posts a month. That'll give you a benchmark to work off of, right? So that when you are trying to, when you're trying to really kill it on a campaign, or maybe you're trying to find out what topic areas really resonate with my audience, you can track and see on your engagement rate. If your engagement rate goes higher than your benchmark or your baseline, then you know you're doing a great job, right? That this really resonates well with your audience and this messaging is really working. So what's great about engagement rate as well is that it's really proportional to your audience size. So as your audience size grows, your engagement rate is this percentage, right? And so this is something that you can track over time, no matter what your audience size is. So simple monthly reports, right? This is a screenshot from Twitter's 30-day monthly summary. They give you a monthly summary at the end of each month. And this is the information that you'll see when you get. And so I like this. This is really helpful. There's some things here that it has that I like in a monthly report. So what I like to track are the top 3 successful posts of the month, right? And so you can see here that there's a top tweet. I would go into tweet level data and pick the top 3 and just screenshot them so I know, and put them in a Google Doc. And just a quick note for myself on why I think they're good. Is it because maybe it had the word COVID in it, and that's a big breaking news, ongoing conversation that goes on that leads to high engagement on social. Or maybe it was just good because of the way we talked about this issue area, the messaging, right? Maybe it was good because of the graphic. Maybe that got a lot of engagement, right? So just why you think it's good. Then you want to track the number of new followers that you have. In this case, for WaterHub, we got 24 new followers in September. And that's just good to track so you can see. I also like to track what is my follower number, my count at the end of each month, right? Just so that it's clear what is our growth point, so I can easily pull a graph if there's if there's ever a question about that, if someone's asking me, hey, what's our growth rate, for example, or, hey, Mina, I need you to put together a digital strategy for next year. And then I suddenly need to know what is a realistic growth rate for us for 2021, right? That way you're not like just you're just saying, oh, we're going to grow 20% in 2021 for the whole year. And then maybe last year in 2020, you really only grew 5%. That would not be a realistic KPI or a realistic key performance indicator to set for yourself. So this way you can set really real goals, and then also be authentic with your management about like what is possible and what is doable for you. Then also what's great about Twitter is they're really into lifting up thought leadership. So you can see here that Tiffany Ashley Bell is our top follower. And we have a top mention from Sarah about WaterHub. So yeah, you want to just keep an eye on those thought leaders, drop them into a list, really important. And yeah, that's it. Yeah, and just a note here, measure against yourself over time, right? That's kind of the biggest takeaway I want you to take from measuring success is there are benchmark reports out there, right? M&R has a great annual benchmark report that they put out every year. And that's great to see and compare yourself to industry benchmarks and that sort of thing. But that's also you comparing yourself to like very large, well-researched, well-resourced organizations and teams as well. So I think the best measurement is against yourself over time. That's the best measurement you could ever have. Just another note here and how we work. Most nonprofits are not digital first, right? We sit siloed, we're in different teams. We come from, maybe more expertise in traditional media or in policy research. So do your best to organize internally, right? Create communications leaders in your organization, right? Develop them by doing trainings like this or smaller versions of them. Get them to also manage social media, train them on your brand voice so that they're able to take it and go with it themselves. Yeah, and just to note, so empower others to do comms work for you, and then gain buy-in from leadership, right? Gain buy-in from, pitch them, tell them, hey, we need to create communications leaders within our teams who can work with me on this, right? Really important. And just another note and plug that being on all platforms is not a measure of a great digital strategy, right? So that's me about digital organizing. Just want to put another pause there before Jerry takes over. Any questions? Okay, great. Take it away, Jerry.
Okay, hi everybody. So I was just going to go over some key points about what it's like in the real world, just using my shop as an example. Can we go to the next slide? So once again, I'm the communications manager for the Community Water Center, and I'm also the only person in the entire communications department, which makes me a comms team of one. And I'm responsible for coordinating our media outreach, maintaining our website, writing and translating our newsletters, and creating communications tools for staff, doing our email blasts, and also managing our social media accounts and our digital organizing. So like all of you who may be in the same boat, I do have my hands full. That being said, it is challenging to create a robust digital organizing program because if you're in a small shop like me, you're up against limited time and limited resources. So I wanted to share some of the ways that I try to manage social media and digital organizing. And after this, I would love to hear what other folks do as well. Next slide. So even though we may feel like we're alone at times, we are not alone. We don't have to do we don't have to do it alone. We don't have to do everything by ourselves. We can partner with our colleagues and our allies for support. And here are some examples of ways that I do that, those types of partnerships. Next slide. So one thing that I do is I have a weekly check-in with our campaign leads for just 30 minutes, half hour, just to talk about social media. That's all we talk about. And they let me know what's coming up in the following week, things that we can use for social media. And we just work on a shared Google Doc that we all just type in there at the same time, type in our ideas for what we can post, or even just write some language right off the top of our heads. And so they help create content. They help write social media posts, and they even provide some of the images, like screenshots of our community members when they're attending Zoom meetings, because we're doing our community outreach now online, so they can share those as pictures with me, or maybe they create their own original graphics that they can share with me. And so we intentionally created the space for us to do that, and that came about just because I asked folks. I just said, hey, can I have so many people just join me half an hour a week? And some folks said, yeah, sure, I'll do that. And so far, so good. Even our HR specialist also helps me by creating the graphics for our job postings. So on the right, you see one that our HR specialist did. On the left, it's somebody, it's created by somebody who was on our social media, weekly team who created that. This is stuff I didn't have to do. They were happy to help out. So if you can do that, that's helpful. Next slide. And definitely it's helpful. It's always helpful and great to brainstorm communications with other communications people, even if they're from other organizations, even better. So I do try to connect with other comms folks who are working on some of the same issues as us. A couple of them are Clean Water Action, Leadership Council, and Water Foundation. So it can be just like by email with each other, or sometimes pick up the phone if it's just like a quick phone call. And for me, I find that it's useful to get feedback on stuff that I'm working on, like social media toolkits, press releases, media pitches, or even just to get background on like a specific media outlet or a reporter that I'm not familiar with, but maybe my colleagues have that experience, so they can help me out. So if you're doing that, great. If not, I would encourage everyone to kind of reach out and connect with one another, and just be thought partners on our work. Next slide. And if you're like me, you're not a graphic designer, or maybe you're just the only communications person on your team, so you might need more hands-on support sometimes for a project, such as creating a social media toolkit. And if you can find the outside resources that can help you with that, definitely reach out to them. As an example that I can share, I wanted to work on creating a social media toolkit for a campaign that was about supporting small water systems during COVID-19 pandemic. And so I had all my messaging down. I knew what messages I wanted to use, but I wasn't sure, what graphics would work best for this, or how to design them in a way that they look professional and that they're all cohesive and go together. So I went ahead and I reached out to the good people at the Water Hub, and they helped me brainstorm some ideas on how we could make these look. And they helped me. They designed the graphics, and we combined them with my messaging. And after that, I came away with a social media toolkit that was enough to last. Using them not too often for about 6 weeks. And so this is one of those graphics that we created. And for us, this had pretty good engagement for us based on our size of our group, of our organization, and our regular engagement rates. So as Mina was saying earlier, as communication professionals, it is tempting to want to compare ourselves to larger organizations and try to match their engagement levels, but we don't necessarily have to get sucked into that, because ultimately it depends on what you and your organization consider is successful. Another example of that is I once created an online petition, and I thought that the number of signers that we got was kind of low, but when I was debriefing, our executive team thought that those numbers were great. So really, it just depends on, once again, on how your organization defines success. Next slide. Okay, so yeah, having a communications intern is another great way that I get support on digital organizing and social media. At Community Water Center, we usually have an intern to help out with various projects. And this last quarter, I was responsible for hiring and managing, like specifically a communications intern, which was great because she was very helpful in creating social media graphics. And she also helped us launch our new website. She was instrumental in helping us with that. So if your organization would be open to hiring a comms intern or a consultant and has the resources to do that, then I definitely would recommend that. Next slide. Yeah, and lastly, as a communications team of one, I don't have a lot of time to focus solely on digital organizing or to be even like posting multiple times a day on social media. There are some times when I can post maybe twice a day or maybe 3 times a day if I'm lucky. But if I get really busy on a project, I try to just post. I try to post once a day if I can. And then there's times where I don't post at all because maybe I'm just working too much on something else. So I don't post as much on social media for those days. But if I can post most days at least once a day, then for us that's pretty good. That's pretty steady. And one way that I try to keep making sure that I have content is to reuse and repurpose my own content, but then also primarily share content from other organizations. So it's good to follow as many other groups that you can that are working on the same issues as you, and reshare and repost their content, and then they can reshare and repost your content too. So here's an example. These are 3 different posts that were all about the same exact story. One of our community partners, Lucy, who's pictured on the right, she was featured in a news article, and Water Foundation tweeted the article, which is on the left. And so I went ahead and retweeted that. So that was one shot there. And the article was also shared on a different outlet in the middle. So I reshared that as like my original content with a quote from Lucy. And then for the 3rd time, I just took a picture of Lucy and added like a different quote from her from the article, put that together, and then I shared that with a link to the news again. So that was, it's 1 article, 3 posts. So if I have time to kind of repurpose and regenerate some of the content, then I try to do that as well. So those are some of the ways that I manage digital content. And that brings us to the end of this section. So we can go to the final slide. And I just would like to thank everybody for joining us today to talk about digital organizing. And I can open it up to any more questions or comments or further discussion. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Jerry. This is just some info about us. If you ever want to email us, talk to us, tweet at us, it's all here. And we'll just move it over to Nicole to facilitate our Q&A. I'm going to stop the screen share as well.
We do not have any questions in the queue yet. You should feel free to type them into the chat or just unmute yourself and ask. I will lift up one question though that came up during your presentation, Mina, from Marta about how to do social listening on platforms other than Twitter. She mentioned that she uses TweetDeck to follow hashtags and trends, but isn't quite sure how to do that on Instagram or other platforms.
Yeah, definitely. It's a little bit harder on Facebook and Instagram. So for Instagram, I would recommend using the Save Posts tool that they have. So you're able to kind of bookmark certain posts, but you could use it as a way to bookmark profiles. So you could just bookmark a post, and then what you can do is categorize those. So you can do it around a certain topic area. So yeah, if you're looking to kind of categorize the people you follow on social because you're trying to listen to what they're saying or see the graphics and memes that they're putting out for Instagram, then you can just kind of jump back to that like saved archive of your saved posts and select the category and just kind of go jump to those profiles and look at them. Another way, so for Facebook, I would just track and manage, like track the pages that you're interested in. There used to be a tool that they had that doesn't exist anymore, to allow you to kind of track lists. But yeah, I would, honestly, create a separate spreadsheet with links to the various pages that you follow and want to look at, or thought leaders, and just check them out. Yeah. And if any other folks who do this day in and day out have any suggestions or ideas, please feel free to unmute and chime in. This is a conversation. Yeah.
I have a question about Facebook.
Sure. Hi, Deborah.
I inherited this task as a volunteer, and I was on Facebook just because I wanted to keep track of what my sons were doing. So I noticed this past summer, like April and May, that the people who friended the Sierra Club's National Water Sentinels Facebook page really increased a lot. So I thought it might be due to the fact that I was sending out to our leaders information that had the Facebook page. That's the only thing that we do, is tell people to email me or go to the Facebook page. And then I thought, well, maybe somehow Facebook decided to show our page to people who have interest in water issues. So that's one idea I'm curious about. And then right now, this page is whoever joins, wants to join, post anything. I haven't had too many problems. I've had to ask the person who talks about Jesus and God to only post spiritual things. And I've turned down people who are a part of a business that have, they're like Jerry, the retailer, the retail realtor, kind of Facebook friend. So any guiding words of wisdom on maybe how to focus, or other than, somebody doing a lot of work for nothing to post things on our programs that are ideas or issues that we work on.
Yeah, so I'm just going to pull out a couple of topics here that you're bringing up. So one is around community management and how to manage your community. And then the other is around Facebook pages and algorithms, right? And so the first piece was around algorithms, right? Like suddenly you're seeing an uptick in followership or page subscribes, that sort of thing, and you're wondering why. And there can be any number of reasons why. And that's kind of why I talked about measuring success and measuring success against yourself. So that if you're tracking, on a monthly basis, like what posts are doing well and what's going on, you can kind of track against yourself and understand, okay, this might be why I'm seeing more followers, right? And so we can't say for sure because everyone's page and everyone's audience is different. But what we do know is that Facebook's algorithm changes all the time, right? They've really moved into a pay to play kind of a space. So it's really like you pay to get boosts and to get more eyes to your content. I really kind of try to hone us in like, what can we do for free, right? What can we do that doesn't require having a lot of resources? And so, that's kind of like what I think about. And yeah, there's just that acknowledgement there that those algorithms do change a lot. And, we don't ever know for sure how they changed and why they changed and that sort of thing. There's a lot of like tech blogs you can read to find out more, but it's all quite a bit of speculation. So there's, and that's because Facebook's algorithm, which is called EdgeRank, if you ever want to Google it, it's Edge and Rank, all one word. That is proprietary knowledge. So it's a secret, right? So that's why I'm being so vague, because I don't know. And the industry doesn't really know. And so about community management, you get back what you put in, you create the space you want to create, right, Deborah? And so you're being very clear about like, who do I want to join the space, right? And whether it's a group, a private group is a lot. There's groups and pages on Facebook, right? And groups, Facebook has in the past year been really advertising folks to move into groups versus pages because of the way they've kind of shifted the platform. So now pages you can kind of think about as like a storefront for your organization, right? It's like a shop front, right? You like walk up to Macy's and you see what's in the window display. That's a Facebook page, right? A group is a place where people gather and people are able to have conversations. And they've also platform wise kind of pushed people towards that by pushing a notification every time you have an update in a group, right? Which when you get a direct notification, you're going to go and check it, right? And so, you know, if you're directly posting to a group for your organization, that like all your audience is going to get a notification, and then they're going to, you know, you have a higher likelihood of them going and checking and seeing what's up, right? And so, you know, when you're in a group, you're also able to be more selective about who you're allowed to join. You can, when you're an administrator, you can say yes and no to certain folks. And so, yeah, that's all about the community you want to cultivate. And then I also recommend you create community guidelines, right? If there are conversations that are happening in the comment that are inappropriate or just, you know, way off topic, you can think about ways you want to redirect that conversation if they're just off topic, or maybe someone just doesn't understand and you really just want to have a conversation with folks. And you can also empower others in your group to do that for you, right? That's how you really build community. You don't have to be the person who's always responding. You can have other folks on your team, at your organization also respond, right? Especially if they're the policy expert and it's a policy kind of a question. And then, yeah, and then you just want to be, you know, there are guidelines that you can find online that are just like, if, you know, if there is just inappropriate behavior that doesn't fall into the context, you can always direct people to community guidelines, and then you can block them. You can kick them out of the group. So, yeah.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
No problem. And I think there was another question from Lisa, right, in the chat?
Yes, Lisa would love for you to talk about tips for moving from a culture of tactics first to a more strategic one, especially when time is always of the essence.
Yes. Oh my gosh, I love this question. This is the whole reason why I put together this training, because we are inevitably in a culture of tactics and of moving quickly. Tips is try to figure out what is the shared value, right? So do a VPSA for your leadership, right? And so figure out where this culture of tactics is coming from first. First identify that, right? Is it coming from the top down, or side to side, or the bottom up, right? Is it a hierarchical thing? Is it just like, you know, coming from another team? Is it coming from your team, right? And then think about what are the values that move those people, right? And start to just talk about strategy and why that's important. Talk to people about it all the time, right? And if folks come to you with a question or a request, like maybe, for example, they're saying, I really want a press release like on Monday, and I want you to do a virtual press call. You know, I would move up and down the game plan with folks. So people are coming to you, you know, virtually, hop on Zoom with them and just say, okay, great. I want to just break down your request and get all the things I need for this. And start with, hey, what are the goals, right? Start at the beginning. What are the goals? Who's the audience for this press release, right? What kind of top line messages do you want to say? And I think for a press release in particular, we're always thinking about, and this is like for email marketing too, what is the different or distinct message we're putting out? What's the new thing that we're saying, right? And why is it different than the run of the mill, right? That's also important to note as well. And so you can start to have a conversation with them and get those wheels moving on a higher level strategy direction, you know, and, you know, I think that also creates a more of a, I seek to create more of like a curious like bed of conversation rather than a I'm telling you to do this and then I'm telling you no kind of a thing, right? So because that gets folks really defensive. And so it's important to just come from a curious place and try to create a curious space and a space for brainstorming and conversation in your organization, which I will say is really challenging, right? Especially if you're a team of one. And that's, I feel like Jerry, I really would love for you to speak to this as well, see what you do, because you did mention in your presentation about how you will pick up the phone and call up folks from other organizations to get that kind of more in a more brainstorm space with other communications professionals. Yeah.
Sure. Something else, I agree with everything that Mina said. And something else that could be useful is creating your own communications plan for the project or the campaign ahead of time, and sharing it with all the different stakeholders, getting their input, and then getting agreement onto this is our communications plan and our communications strategy going forward. And it helps to have those conversations that Mina was describing on how does this align with our strategy and our goals, and trying to draw them back to that and sticking to our plan as a tool.
Thanks, Jerry. Michael, do you have a question?
I do, yes. Hello,
Yay.
everyone. Mina, I'm loving your virtual background. I just feel like a ladybug just soaking in the warmth. I'm here in Minnesota, and we just got our first major cumulative snowfall of the year. So I appreciate that. Thank you. And Jerry as well. I work for nonprofits called the Mississippi River Network. And I hear you on kind of being a shop of one for a lot of various communication aspects. And my question's around message testing and kind of tapping into the group collective knowledge here. In the past, we have outsourced some of our message testing, polling info, kind of as some of you have mentioned, what are other folks doing? What's available? How can we bring this in and use it? I desire for us to, and I'm curious how we can do more sort of just quick basic message testing on the front end of some campaigns on social media, in particular in post, right? Do you all have further recommendations? I thought, Mina, like what you mentioned with the VPSA, I want to look into that more from the opportunity agenda. That seems meaningful. Any other recommendations from the group on good resources for developing message testing, especially when you're in the nonprofit world, as I'd say a lot of us on this call know, right? Resources are often sacred. So, yeah.
I've seen, hey, Michael, thanks for that question. I've seen message testing done a couple of ways. One is by, organizers in the field and having conversations with people and seeing what messages resonate the best with folks. And then the other is hiring one of those consultants who actually just call people in large volumes and run through the questions for you and then spit out a report for you on what messages work best. I don't know if anyone else wants. Yeah, sure. I don't know if anyone else wants to.
I can share. At my previous job, which was a nonprofit PR firm, we did a fair amount of quick and not always statistically significant message testing using split ad campaigns on Facebook. So you can set up a number of campaigns all targeting the same audience with a simple call to action, like maybe a petition signature or viewing something. And then you see if you keep the image the same, then you're able to test the copy and whether there is a certain copy combination that drives more engagement. Similarly, you can keep the copy the same and test different images.
Thank you.
That reminds me of, I've also seen like A/B testing, similar A/B testing for an email. So you do an A/B test on an email to see which one gets the most open rates or the most clicks, depending on how you frame, each one.
Yeah.
That can help for an email type of thing.
So we do some of that in Salsa, some A/B testing, subject message line, things of that nature. So I appreciate that. Is there any other examples particular to social media? Nicole, that one was interesting, thinking of like ad campaigns in Facebook. I'm less familiar with Instagram and Twitter, which is kind of a growing edge for us right now. Similar setup, like ad campaigns to Facebook, better ones, worse ones, other,
You can set up the same sort of A/B tests on or ABC or D, however many versions you want to test on Twitter. I've never done it on Instagram, but it's built on the same advertising platform as Facebook. So I would imagine that you probably could do it there. Although I would note that Instagram is much more image driven. So I don't know how purpose built it is for testing language.
Yeah. So when you're setting up tests, the core goal that you want to think about is only one variable at a time. So just that core principle is like, maybe I'm testing the copy, like what's written, as Nicole mentioned in her example, or maybe I'm testing the image, and then you want to switch it. And so for Instagram, for example, there's not really like a great kind of internalized scheduling tool for, like it is on Facebook, right? Facebook, you could schedule 2 posts that have the same image and different copy to go out at the same time. And that can be like a DIY A/B test. I'm just looking for the word there, right? It's not like super accurate like it is like for email, right? When you're using a CRM like Salsa, it's actually going to split your audience into 2, and it's going to be very exact. And so like when you're testing on social with a campaign, you can be a lot more exact when you have dollars to go towards it. But if you're trying to do it organically, it's not going to be as exact. So I just want to name that it's not the best data. But you can schedule, like for Twitter using TweetDeck or any other like Hootsuite or whatever. And for Facebook internally on their scheduling tool, you can send 2 posts to go out at the same time that are different. For Instagram, for example, because you can't do that, you could, if you are tracking, for example, time of day, and you know that like, maybe from posting, you've learned that like maybe like 12 noon is a really good time where you get a lot of interaction, then you could over 2 different days, or maybe the same day of the week over 2 weeks, put out your test, right, at the same time, and just see what was the interaction, right? It was like a different graphic and the same caption or whatever your test is. But just try to keep it down to 1 variable, and then just let it go over time, like, and test all the different variables that you have questions about.
Sweet. Thanks all.